Welcome to Caleb Can't Read. I'm Jordan Rabel.
I'm Caleb Terrence.
Have you ever been to Nebraska?
No.
Well, that was it for my segue question.
Hey, Jordan has gotten so fat that I just watched him walk through his hallway and then knock down the little paintings he had hanging on the side.
I stumbled, not because I'm fat, and not because it was a waddle. I fucking shook my hair out of my eyes and I lost balance. So it's not like that's better.
Did you stand up too fast there and then move with a little bit too much?
My knees buckled.
A little bit too much confidence. Getting a little too big for your britches? Huh?
Yeah, it's a good way to talk about a toddler waddle. Just walking with so much confidence. I mean, literally the Nebraska question is the best I got. What's the most Midwest you've ever been?
Oh, fuck. I don't know. I honestly have no fucking idea. I truly don't.
I feel like, I feel like if I were to give you... Oh, Colorado.
Yeah.
Oh, why?
On the way moving up here.
Oh, from weird detour.
Coast. Yes.
Yeah, I just had a great idea to just film you trying to name each state like on a little fucking map where it's just got all the lines are there, but a little dotted line for each letter that's supposed to go for each state.
Don't do me like that. Come on, man.
Be very cute.
Fuck off.
Alaska.
I know the important ones.
What are the important ones? The ones that always get shown on the news? Those aren't the good ones. They're not important for the right reasons.
If they weren't important, they wouldn't be on the news, would they, Jordan?
Oh, there you go, Florida. Not only do you have your own strain of like fucking hepatitis, but you're important. So say Caleb.
Imagine how many strains of COVID have come out of there at this point.
Oh, fucking dozens.
Mm-hmm. That was pretty early on. They just stopped giving a fuck.
Yeah, that was. I don't know if they started giving a fuck, honestly.
Mm-hmm. Not once.
Not once. Well, I can't say the same for Nebraska. Anyway.
Yeah, what do you got? What do you got today?
Let's get started, shall we?
You told me it was a bunch of farms.
Yeah.
And then you told me not to yawn, which is like...
Don't yawn about it.
Don't be boring about it, and I won't fucking yawn, Jordan.
I didn't make her life.
Okay, but you chose to present it.
I wanted to know more about her Nebraska boring life. Willa Cather was born December 7th, 1873 in Gore, Virginia, a place whose claim to fame is being the birthplace of Willa Cather. Gore is one of those unincorporated communities we see every so often in our episodes. Do you remember those at all? It's like people just settle somewhere in between towns and no town wants to deal with the municipality of like ruling these people. So you just kind of do their own thing.
So it's just a new town?
Basically. Okay. Except it's all Bartertown. Well, I'm sure it is because it's in Virginia, at least for this one. Okay. Anyway, Willa was named after her father's sister and born to her parents Charles and Mary Cather in her grandmother's farmhouse built by her great-grandfather in the early 1800s and also the place in which her parents married. Very much a stationary kind of family. Like, here we are, no need to change anything else.
I mean, it was harder to move back then.
I mean, fucking cars weren't invented yet. Yeah, it fucking sucks. Mm-hmm. The family name Cather derives from the Cadair Idris Mountains in Wales, where their ancestors were from, by the way. Also, Cadair means chair in Welsh. The mountain was named like it was the throne of the warrior Idris. But anyway, her name is Willa Chair now. So anyway, after Willa Cather came 6 more kids. Roscoe in 1877, Douglas in 1880, Jessica in 1881, James in 1886, and Elsie in 1890. And maybe another brother named John, although I couldn't find anything on the guy. And as it would turn out, the younger the siblings were, the less Willa would interact with them. And we mostly know about her family through her own writing. So if she didn't mention someone or something, they're pretty much entirely lost to history. She really only hung out with her brothers Roscoe and Douglas and her sister Jessica. Anyhow, when Willa was 1 year old, her family moved out of their grandparents into a house that they named Willow Shade, just a short 5 miles from her birthplace, which along with the surrounding 130 acres was completely bought and given to the family from her paternal grandparents as a gift. This house was hand-built by her grandfather, just as his pappy done. But Willa's family was not popular in her time because this was after the Civil War, and although she had uncles that fought for the South, her family mostly consisted of staunch abolitionists. To give you an idea of how her family was viewed, one of her earliest memories was of the family sheep barn catching on fire under suspicious circumstances, and while her parents were doing what they could to put out the fire, she watched and listened as she heard the animals inside burn to death.
What? Why are you laughing? That's horrible.
Nothing. I just the look on your face was a complete blank. Like that was normal.
Yeah, racist burned down a barn with animals inside of it. What do you want me to say? Like, what the fuck? Like,
fair enough. You know what? Fuck it. Why not? Yeah. I mean, hasn't everyone been like 3? Well, unsurprisingly, when Willa was 9 years old, at the behest of her father's parents, the whole family moved entire states over. No longer worried about staying on their ancestral land. Go figure. They moved to the town of Red Cloud, Nebraska, which again is famous for having Willa Cather live there. Besides that, the town is today known to have a 9-hole golf course, which is listed as the 3rd best in Nebraska. Ooh.
We're just going to...
Good destination.
I don't even know if I want to hang that on the fridge.
It's on their official website.
Wait. I don't know anything about golf. Is Nebraska like a golfing spot?
I don't think so.
Nice for golf there?
I can't imagine that it is because it's just flat lands. There's no real like.
Is that good for that?
No, because you need a couple hazards to make it not fucking more boring than it is.
You can just move land around for stuff. Like,
you could.
Yeah.
I mean, this is Nebraska. They got a reputation to uphold.
I'm sure they have industrial...
Not a single bump, God damn it.
Except for the golf course. I don't know. I mean, I fucking hate golf, but like, I don't...
It is impressive, but God, it's boring to watch.
Is it? I mean...
You're hitting a tiny ball with a stick and making it go like 300 yards into a hole first try. That's impressive.
Is it impressive that you spent your fucking life learning how to do that?
Give me another synonym for impressive. I don't know if that's good. It's impressive in a certain regard, but not...
It is a massive waste of land and resources, Jordan.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. Well, according to the family, they actually moved from Virginia to escape a tuberculosis outbreak that was happening in their area. But chances are pretty good that they didn't mention that they were abolitionists to their new neighbors. I actually looked at it, like, not going as deep as, like, fucking microfiching, but I did...
What?
You know that thing where they... Microfiche. When they give you the little roll, you know, when you see in movies when they're like, oh my God, did a girl die in my house back in 2008? And instead of going on the internet to find out, like, yeah, they go down to the library, they give them a roll of fucking film. It has pictures of all the fucking newspaper pages. And they do that thing where it, like, turns on screen. Anyways, that's called microfiching. But either way, they've there's an extensive record of, like, old newspapers, like, especially for big outbreaks and shit that happen. And I looked it up. There was no outbreak that I could see from fucking Virginia around that time. They said there was a tuberculosis outbreak happening in Virginia, and that's why they moved. But chances are good that they were about to get hung by a bunch of racists. Oh, yeah. So... Yeah. Well, the Cathers' new farm was right next to Willa's cousins.
Tuberculosis, the one that spreads from poop.
From poop?
Never mind.
That's pink eye.
Okay, my bad. Wait, what?
I gotta find a new hobby. Well, the Cathers' new farm was right next to Willa's cousins, so there was safety in numbers. But Charles Cather, her father, had to completely rework his entire lifestyle. He was new to being a farmer, but he gave it the old college try for about a year and a half, before giving up and becoming a real estate agent instead. However, this small glimpse into farming life would be detrimental to Willa's childhood memories. Also, Red Cloud, Nebraska...
Did you get hit in the head with something? Or
kicked in the head by a horse.
Yep.
Forgot all college. It's fucking horrible. Well, also, Red Cloud, Nebraska had a burgeoning immigrant population from places in Eastern Europe, as most Europeans that immigrated there had heard of the American dream and were eager to try farming somewhere else. And Willa loved the melting pot communities therein. she found within these cultures new ways of doing things rather than the old, tired American way. She apparently loved meeting up with these immigrants so much that she would go down to the train depot and just start chatting up families as they arrived. We stayed 2 months across the fucking ocean to get to Nebraska.
Hi, oh my God, what's going on? No.
Please stop. Oh my God. Everyone pretend like you don't know English. Wow! Is that a lederhosen? Wow!
That's not Eastern Europe. Well, you know what? Fuck it. Yeah, it is.
You know what?
I want you to keep on your life believing that.
Yeah, it's Asian, right? Well, with Charles Cather no longer a farmer and without...
Lederhosen is Canadian, you fucking idiot.
Which African country? What do you mean? Africa is just a country. Well, with Charles Cather... Fuck you. With Charles Cather no longer a farmer and without this need for child labor on the farm anymore, it meant that the Cather kids were now allowed to attend school for the first time in the city. Without being held down by her family's need for labor, Willa saw herself as being able to form her own personality for the first time in her life, and not just be doomed to become a farmer. However, she saw how her mother lived, with an old antebellum charm and not doing anything all day because it was unladylike. And although
That's a good grift.
It is nice, right?
Think I could pull that? You think I could pull that off?
With those hips? Absolutely.
They don't lie.
And although she loved her mother, Willa wanted nothing more than to not be that. Just another fucking housewife. Someone who doesn't have to be anything because she's just a woman. And more importantly, she didn't want to become someone who was expected not to do anything because she was a woman. So she became a man. Kind of. She got a crew cut, wore pants, and wore a derby hat, which was expressly for men, apparently.
Here, we're getting a little murky here. Is this person transgender, or are they just...
She's having a good time. It's murky in all official accounts, actually. We'll get into that in a little bit.
I'm scared of this episode now. I don't like it. I don't like this one now. Jordan.
It's going to be like the fucking Ralph Ellison episode again where you're just like, I don't know if we're the people that should be telling this story.
Like, hey, I'm a fucking 30-year-old arborist. Like, I don't know a lot about this shit. It's fine, but just, I don't.
Just careful.
It's not my fucking wheelhouse.
When she started getting active in community plays, Willa only chose to play the male parts. And everyone loved it because they thought she was just eccentric and not totally gay, which she was. So Willa, being the town goofball, was allowed to make house calls with the local doctor as if it would just be a gas to have some woman dressed like a man come along while this guy changes colostomy bags or something. Like, maybe he thought that she would be some sort of Patch Adams and make his patients laugh the pain away. I don't know.
Yeah, what's sillier than a woman dressed as a man?
What's sillier than a woman just coming into my house and telling me doctor things anyway? You know, that's what are you doing? You know, you goofball. A derby hat.
Fuck up, man.
It's like fucking 1890. I don't know.
What time period is this exactly?
Late 1800s. So yeah, she was living basically in the Wild West days. Okay. So yeah. Well, regardless, the doctor would go even a step further and have her sign her name in the visitation books. Like, her name would be on recorded documents and be partly at fault if someone fucking dies. Now, I'm sure...
And then I wrote my dog's name down, too. I'm a fucking crack up.
Put the bedpan on his head. Put the bedpan... Come on, let's take a picture.
Funniest man in Nebraska.
It'll be really funny. Come on, we'll take a picture. It'll take like 2 hours to develop, but let's do it. Just stay still. Stay still. Put the derby hat on. It's funny. I'm sure that's not how it really went. Like, you know, if something did happen that she would get in trouble or anything. But I'm sure the doctor knew she had an actual genuine interest in medicine as well, which she did. And just, you know, he was letting her get some practice in. But regardless, in all of these little documents that she would sign as the doctor's assistant, she did so by signing her name William instead of Willa. Eventually, she changed her weird fucking name, to something different altogether, where the world would forever know her as Willa Cather. But Willa Cather wasn't just well-loved by her community because she was gender-bent, she was an actual good person. And she was especially loved by a neighboring family who allowed her to browse their extensive library at any time she wanted, where she would of course find a love for reading. She eventually found herself trying her hand at writing and even published some of her short stories in the local newspaper called the Red Cloud Chief. But between this and doing the house calls with the doctor, she was more inspired to take her schooling in a medical direction. But she did still have a job while she attended the University in Nebraska in Lincoln, where she made a small income selling her stories to the Nebraska State Journal, $1 per story, about $32 today. So writing was still there as a bit of a side hustle. I'm sure she could still buy her pot with it. When a teacher of hers coincidentally read one of her stories, he was so impressed by her talent that he told her to pursue her career in writing rather than medicine. Which, I mean, maybe for that time was maybe the right call since she was a woman. I don't know, but
I mean, you still had to change your name to be a writer if you're a woman. So.
At this point, there have been women writers. It's going to be a lot harder to get your foot in the door, sure. But I mean, like a woman doctor, I don't know if you could be anything past a nurse. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But either way, Willa Cather decided to focus entirely on writing instead, per his advice, becoming the editor of her school newspaper, The Hesperian. Which means you're such a prick. You did that on purpose.
No, I didn't.
Liar.
I just had to fucking yawn, man.
I just decided to do it long and loud and with a smile staring directly into your eyes.
Look, man. I was fucking bored. Like, I don't know what you want. Like,
so,
you know what I want?
What?
I want you to not cause me to yawn, Jordan.
Oh, prick. So anyway, she became the editor for her school newspaper, The Hesperian, which means the Western in Greek. Now, apparently this newspaper was made up of a bunch of young women who wanted to try their hand at writing and possibly look at a future in literary careers. But by the end of the school year, The Hesperian was entirely made up of Willa's own poetry and essays, no one else's. It's not like she only allowed her own stuff to get printed. It's just that everyone else gave up when they compared their work to hers. And Willa was prevalent in her masculinity even in college, writing an essay called The Art of Football, basically calling anyone who doesn't like football a pussy and saying that football is as close to the battles depicted in Homer's epics that we'll ever get, so fucking get over it. Oh, and also, just because I think it's interesting to know who knew who back in the day, Willa Cather's math teacher was John Pershing, a few years before he went to West Point and eventually became one of the main commanders for the U.S. during World War I. Thought it was neat. Anyway, Willa graduated from the University of Nebraska with a Bachelor of Arts.
Bachelor of Farts.
Bachelor of Farts in 1895 at the age of 21, and was soon hired as a writer for a new women's magazine called Home Monthly in Pittsburgh, where she moved to be closer to her work. I think it's funny that there was a women's magazine called Home Monthly because that's where they were expected to be. Anyway.
I'm not joining you in this. This is all you, man.
No, the big city can be intimidating to a woman, as we all know. I'll just keep digging myself deeper. She sit there and take half the blame. So she moved in with a friend named Isabel McClung, whom Willa Cather would later say she dedicated every book to. Not on paper, but, you know, in her mind. However, Home Monthly closed its...
She didn't do it on paper. How do you know about it?
She said. Which is a weird, like, posthumous thing to say, kind of like, yes. She was always an inspiration. Did you ever say it before this point in the 40 years that you've been doing this? No. Cool. Thanks. Well, Home Monthly closed its doors a short 4 years later, from which Willa later became an editor for the Pittsburgh Leader, a newspaper, before settling down as an English and Latin teacher at Allegheny High School in 1901, later becoming the head of the English department until 1906. I know that's a long-winded paragraph, but what's important is that in the middle of this small 5-year stint as a teacher, Willa Cather decided to collect the poems that she'd published thus far in various magazines and publish them in a collection. Published in 1903 by Gorham Press, April Twilights was released to very poor fucking reviews. Now, the book would later go on to be praised by people such as Mark Twain, but at the time, it was little understood by the literary community. In fact, at one point, Willa got so embarrassed of her work that she bought the remaining copies and burned them. It was after this failure as a writer that Willa quit as a teacher and soon began work as a part-time reporter for a newspaper called the Lincoln Courier. It's here that she met a colleague by the name of Edith Lewis, while Willa was about 33 and Edith was around 23. Now we can go ahead and discuss this part here. Was Willa Cather a lesbian? Granted, the way I've maybe portrayed her in the episode thus far...
Why is this a question? I mean,
because here's the thing.
You just told me.
It might seem ridiculous to ask, but it's been a hot topic for scholars ever since she jumped onto the scene. Even in the PBS documentary I watched about her, they make it seem like, oh, gee, I guess we'll never know, but probably not.
It's pretty fucking simple.
And well, I know, and all I'll say is this. Willa was very close to a lot of people we know for facts were lesbians in her life. She even had a friendship with known linguistics professor and lesbian Louise Pound, no relation to Ezra Pound, when they were both in college. But apparently Willa was too clingy about their friendship that they, quote, broke off their friendship in 1894. Bro, you don't end friendships like that. That was a breakup.
Yeah. Your friend is too clingy. No,
no.
No clingy friends. No, but no, it's very simple. It's just, it is scary to do that at that time.
I know.
Like, and it's still dangerous to like have everybody know you do that now in some places.
We'll even touch on it a bit more in the second episode of this as well, but like... I really feel like it goes without saying, and people keep bringing it up, and it feels like a lot of boomers just don't want her to be because she's a literary hero. And they're like, well, but I don't, but that conflicts with a lot of my beliefs.
We don't know for sure, but we do know beyond a reasonable doubt.
It's like, look, if you can like hail James Joyce as a great writer, but we know him to be a piece of shit for a fact. I mean, whatever.
I mean, dude, like a fucking quarter of the people you talk with me about on here that have written these literary classics.
Yeah, they're bad people like, most of the time.
I'm one of them fucking drugged women so they'd fart in his face. Mm-hmm. Like, for fuck's sake. But oh no, not the lesbian.
Yeah, that's how I feel about it. And to me, it's not gay erasure as much as it is just gay denial. Like, there is no erasure that they're like, there's nothing there that they're erasing, definitely. It's just that the evidence was never there for them to kind of like restructure the history on it,
Pixar, it didn't happen.
Yeah, exactly. Like, they can't revise the history because the history isn't there. We don't have it down on paper, and so therefore they're just like, well, then she must be straight, But the reason so many scholars aren't sure if she was gay or not comes down to there being no letters expressly saying this, and that's it. However, that's probably also because at the end of her life, Willa Cather burned all of her personal letters and asked others to do the same, which seems suspicious to me. But most of her friends...
It seems a little lesbian-y.
It seems like maybe you didn't want something getting out. But most of her friends didn't burn their letters. There are around 2,100 surviving letters that are on file and freely available online in the Willa Cather archive from the University of Nebraska-Lincoln.
That is weird.
Nothing in there explicitly saying she's gay, though, so I guess that's just good enough for some people to assume she wasn't.
It kind of sucks, man. I mean, like, it's one thing to, like, hang on to it and not burn it if she tells you to burn it, but, like, why is it published if she told you to burn it?
Something tells me they did a lot of cherry picking. Like, yeah, she wanted stuff burned. I feel like because she didn't want something like that to get out, and I feel like maybe the people that she was writing knew that she didn't want that shit to get out, so they still kept some letters because she was still very famous by the time she died, and they wanted to be like, hey, here's proof that I knew Willa Cather, and so they kept those letters, but then the ones that may have hinted at something else, they're just like, yeah, go ahead, we can burn that one, Like, I get it. She grew up in Wild West days,
Yeah.
But anyway... After Cather's apparent failure as a writer with April Twilights, she stuck close to a those who can't do teach type of philosophy, where she became head editor of McClure's magazine, a place known at this time for its high turnaround rate due to the dickishness of magazine owner Mr. McClure. However, Willa was a very authoritarian woman herself, and she helped keep things on a strict timeline for their hired authors and journalists, and actually managed to bring McClure's magazine sales to a new high. And that's verifiable. We know it was because of her work that got them there. Her dedicated work towards the magazine landed her a book deal through Mr. McClure as a reward, who saw something in the short stories she'd dabble in from time to time. And in 1905, McClure, Phillips and Company published The Troll Garden, a collection of short stories. Now, overall, this book, like her first one, didn't really turn a lot of heads. I have to imagine the stories themselves are fine because Willa Cather is a great writer, but apparently the stories were made with like an air of sophistication so Willa could feel like she was part of the literary crowd. We saw Herman Melville do this with like his first collection of some short stories that he published where people were just like, get fucked, kid. You're not the only one that's read John Milton. Fuck you.
It's like, I didn't want to just read about you jacking yourself off, man.
I mean, I would. But either way, it seems like these stories are heavy on allusions to classical works, references to Romanticist authors, shit like that. But out of this entire collection, there was one story that apparently was very influential, called Paul's Case. Paul is a young man who balances his life between his days at school and being an usher for his local theater. Most nights at the theater, when Paul is done seating the audience, he likes to hang around and just get lost in the music. And he dreams of escaping the dreariness that is Pittsburgh for the lights and sounds of New York City. But Paul is always at odds with his old man. His father wants desperately for him to be an everyman, a settle down and have some kids kind of guy. And Paul feels like his father is harboring a secret hatred for who he is. And one night, Paul knows that he'll be yelled at by his dad if he's coming home so late. So instead of coming in the front door, he decides to come in through the basement window instead. And a part of him actually fantasizes...
Oh, fuck, I forgot to leave through the fucking...
Well, part of him actually fantasizes...
No, he just thinks I didn't come home.
No, he thinks about his dad thinking he's an intruder and shooting him. And he kind of gets off on the idea. Or better yet, not shooting him once he realizes it's his own son, and then watching the disappointment flood over his eyes when he realizes he could have shot his own son and gotten away with it. That is some deep, deep therapist issues.
Fucking teenagers, man.
Yeah. I bet my dad wants me dead. No, just clean your fucking room. God damn it.
Dude, just wake up. Come on.
Stop beating off. Just lock your door.
Hey,
no!
That never stops.
Just lock your door.
You know what needs to stop?
I said knock. Okay, your door was open. Quit whacking off in the doorway.
Damn well what I'm doing. Don't enter abruptly and then get shot.
I wasn't entering abruptly. I'm walking past in the hallway. I'm sorry. Fucking close your door.
Look, just don't look at me for 20 years.
Actually, look at me for just a few minutes.
That'd be funny if the situation wasn't incestuous, man. What the fuck?
Oh, man.
These details matter.
I'm going to show you Ari Aster's fucking student film later. It's up on YouTube.
I don't want you to show me anything.
Well, one day, Paul's tasked with the closing shift at work. One of the duties being that he needs to bring that night's deposit at the theater down to the bank. Well, instead, Paul sees this as possibly his only opportunity of living his dream. So he runs off with the cash and takes a train to New York City. But he quickly starts dreading his decision, like, what the fuck am I even going to do? I don't even know how fucking New York works. But getting off the train, he quickly meets a boy from San Francisco who shows him how things are done in the big city. And soon, Paul is living it up. He does whatever he wants, eats whatever he wants, and dresses, quote, as a dandy. Hell yeah. It's all exactly as he wished it would be. But on the 8th day of his adventure, Paul reads in the newspaper about his theft the week prior. It's made national news. And what's more, the article states that his father is actually repaid every last cent that he stole from his work, and he swears to the newspaper to redeem his son's bad behavior by bringing him in himself. Paul, rather than face the monotony of Pittsburgh once again, or the consequences of his own actions, jumps in front of a train.
Wow. Okay, that's
The end. Now, as weird of a story as this is...
That's a weird reaction from somebody who was just fantasizing about their dad shooting them. Or
I mean,
so disappointed afterwards
maybe
that
was the
them.
fantasy the whole time, it seems.
What's the...
Yeah, as weird as this story is, practically every literary critic believes this to be an allegory to Cather's own life. Not about wanting to live her life in luxury, but just wanting to be who she truly is. In this case, gay, but can't be open about it. I don't know if that was her actual intent with this story, but like I said before, pretty much all the critics agree that that's what it's about, so who am I to disagree? There was also this one story in the Troll Garden that, while not popular, was supposedly based on her friend's mom, and it didn't paint her in the best light, so they stopped talking to each other for like 10 years. I thought that was funny. Like I mentioned before, the short story collection of hers, The Troll Garden, didn't turn a lot of heads. So to Willa Cather, she knew this was it. You know, you tried your hand at writing twice, and while, yeah, you got published, you aren't famous or anything, and now you've just got a career as an editor at McClure's. That's not bad. As a matter of fact, instead of trying...
Could be a farmer or something.
Yeah, you could be back in fucking Nebraska, dude.
Yeah.
Like, as a matter of fact, instead of trying to latch onto any
You'd rather be in Nebraska in a fucking dress? Fuck no.
She just looks longingly in the mirror and puts on her derby hat and is just like, oh, we meet again, old friend. Well, instead of trying to latch onto any sort of her own fame again, Willa Cather did her best work as an editor to raise awareness in another author altogether, making them famous instead. Georgine Milmeen was working on a series of articles to expose the parlor tricks of Christian Science founder Mary Baker Eddy, who was quickly leading a cult-like following in America. Basically, what this lady did was attribute all science to miracles, not just the things that we couldn't explain yet, like what's usually the case, but instead of things happening because of science, things happen only because of miracles. So science itself is a miracle.
It's just there in the air, man.
Yeah, everything's a miracle. Yeah. You're a miracle.
Whoa.
And basically, so that twinkle.
I really hate when you're nice to me.
And basically what Mary Baker Eddy would do is claim, oh, science actually explains God existing logistically. Stuff like that. Like, do you get it? It's, you know...
Never mind. Go on.
Okay, I feel like your brain is like, do you get it?
I think so.
They do have those. You'll see the Christian reading rooms, places like that they have them sometimes downtown and stuff. Christian Science bookstores. That's what they are. So they're kind of like they'll sort of teach you biology and physics, but at the same time they're just like, yes. Isn't it cool how God made it that way? You know, that kind of thing.
You're like, sure, man.
Yeah,
I guess as long as you. Actually, never mind. I'm going to leave.
This isn't a real bookstore, is it? No! Welcome! Well, she had a huge following and was, of course, an anti-vaxxer, but was also against people trying to fix their handicaps because God made them that way. Like, don't get a peg leg if it got eaten by a whale or anything. That's insulting God's design.
You're insulting me right now when I'm very real and very right here.
My bitch slap about to get real fucking real. But Mary Baker Eddy also wore glasses.
I'm going to show you God's plan.
Well, she wore glasses, so she was kind of a big fucking hypocrite, you know?
Yeah.
And Willa Cather, along with a handful of other ghostwriters, helped write an entire book that was cataloged in McClure's over 14 articles, calling out Mary Baker Eddy on her bullshit. But again, the entire series was only attributed to one person, Georgine Milmeen. So although Willa and others received no credit, what they did get was under-the-table deals. For Willa, the success of the articles on Mary Baker Eddy led to McClure's rewarding her with another opportunity at authorship. Whereas she'd already seen herself as a failed poet and a failed short story author, this time she was going to go for the big guns. This time she would produce her very first novel. The publication of her book would first be released in serial form through McClure's before being published in hardback by publishing company Houghton Mifflin in 1912. The book was called Alexander's Bridge, about a man with a midlife crisis having an affair. And again, it fell extremely short of the mark.
I can't imagine being in more crisis in my 50s than now, but sorry, that phrase just confuses me.
Man, it's going to grow. It's great. You remember how things are worse this year than last year? It's just like that forever. It's great. Take more pills.
Fuck.
The book was actually not a complete failure. It did get some generally good reviews, but Cather saw it as very weak for what she knew she could produce. And honestly, I'm not even going to go over this one. Throughout the rest of her life, Willa pretended that this book just didn't exist, so I'll take her word for it that it's not that great. But instead of letting another lame duck be the end of her would-be career, Willa was actually inspired to perfect her craft this time around. She felt that she had really felt her calling with this one. Not in poetry, not in short fiction. She was a novelist, baby. Just a year after the release of Alexander's Bridge, she would follow up with a second novel in 1913, the first of what would be known as the Prairie Trilogy. God, doesn't that sound exciting? Oh, you can smell it already.
I think I blocked out what you just said just like automatically as a defense mechanism.
God, you're the worst. But this time, Willa Cather said that she, quote, decided not to write at all, simply to give myself up to the pleasure of recapturing in memory people and places I'd forgotten. Inspired by the title of a Walt Whitman poem called Pioneers, Oh Pioneers, she released her first of many classic, simply called Oh Pioneers. One January day, 30 years ago, the little town of Hanover, anchored on a windy Nebraska tableland, was trying not to be blown away. A mist of fine snowflakes was curling and eddying about the cluster of low, drab buildings huddled on the gray prairie under a gray sky. The dwelling houses were set about haphazard on the tough prairie sod. Some of them looked as if they had been moved in overnight, and others as if they were straying off by themselves, headed straight for the open plain. How'd that make you feel?
Pretty neutral. Pretty neutral about it.
Oh, Nebraska.
Yeah. How else does one feel about Nebraska, Jordan?
Hey, it's there. I mean, it's a state, you know?
Yeah, it's a state.
I would happily give it up for, like, Costa Rica or something, but, you know, whatever.
No.
We open on the scene of the dying John Bergson, a Swedish immigrant whose whole life has consisted of toiling away at the rough Nebraskan earth to try and make a future for his family, but who finds that when he wasn't battling the crops, he was battling the mortgage. Even as he dies, John Bergson gives farming advice to his 3 sons and only daughter.
Oh, that was sudden. How old is this guy?
Oh, I don't know. Old enough to just die in Nebraska, which is probably like 36.
All of the time at that time period.
Are you sick, Father? No, I'm just kind of giving up.
I'm really tired. No, I'm really, really tired.
Literally, if we farmed any other state, this would probably be fine. But we were in Nebraska.
But this is where I can afford the mortgage, and I'm dying. Yeah.
Isn't the back of our state coin just going to be wheat? Oh, probably.
What the fuck else?
It's the flattest coin that they ever produced. So even as he dies, John Bergson gives farming advice to his 3 sons and only daughter, named Alexandra, before passing away. And it's not like the family doesn't know how to farm. It's just that the town of Hanover resides on a particular prairie called the Divide, which is notoriously difficult to cultivate. As John Bergson put it, quote, the Divide is unfriendly to man. Very tough words for corn. And these words would ring true, as 3 years later...
Well, if you don't grow the fucking corn, you die, so...
I mean, Couldn't we go to the grocery store? It's like 10 miles that way.
What is that?
I don't want to.
Is it like a food library?
Just eat your dirt. And these words would ring true, as 3 years later, the Bergson family is no more successful than when John left it. Worse yet, a drought has come to the town of Hanover, putting most farms out of business. However, as most families have moved away, including Alexandra's young beau, Carl Lindstrom, Alexandra convinces her brothers to actually take out a second mortgage on the house, just to keep their failing farm afloat. Well, 13 years later, turns out Alexandra was right to have them stay. The farm is such a large producer of product that the 2 older brothers of Alexandra's have farms of their own, and she's even managed to send her youngest brother to college. But of course, the 2 older brothers have reserves against the way of their woman sisters doing business. Namely, her experimental farming techniques, which have obviously been working since the farm is still afloat, and her employment of one Crazy Ivar, His name in the book is Crazy Ivar, a neighbor of theirs, an old Norwegian man who's prone to fits of insanity. What's more, her brothers are suspicious of her old love Carl Lindstrom suddenly coming back to town 13 years after his family moved away and wants to just pick things up where they left off. But also, like, live in her house for just a few weeks, while I get up on my feet,
Yeah, totally not interested in all this wealth you have or anything. Just to,
no, it's cool, for a woman and everything.
Wait, my ex is doing what? In Nebraska? I'll go.
I mean, it's very nice. The experimental techniques, I'm actually cool with that and everything, but can you take off the derby hat? It's really unsettling. The pants are fine, but derby hat, ooh, not doing it for me. But Carl isn't around for long, as he's been obviously threatened by Alexandra's two older brothers and decides it's in his best interest to head for Alaska. Not only do her brothers find it unbecoming of...
It's not like it can get worse than, shit.
Well, what can I farm here? Oh. Well, at least there's no bear. Oh. At least it's not full of Alaska. Oh.
There's nothing but Alaska in Alaska, my friend. It's just Alaska.
This isn't even where they filmed Who's Nailin' Palin. Like this.
Well, I can just find I'm sure I can, find a wife up here, settle down. Oh, there are way more men than women.
There are so many more.
Can you imagine that? You'd have to, Jesus Christ, dude, you'd have to, if you were to move to Alaska, if you moved to Alaska and you were single and you were just like a regular ass dude, you're now just going to probably just die like that. And even, dude, can you imagine how stiff that competition would be? Even if you just brought a wife up with you, good luck holding on to that.
There's
those odds.
There's one strip club and everyone's daughter is working there.
Well,
I mean, where would you prefer to live, though? Alaska or Nebraska?
Nebraska.
I actually would probably go for Nebraska as well. I remember one dude on 4chan talking about just like, I'm going to up and move everything I got. I saved up a lot of money. I'm just going to go up to Alaska and live off the land, guys. And they were like, how the fuck are you going to do that? And he was like, I'm going to fish. And they were like, you are a fucking moron. But by the way, fishing doesn't last all year round. It's not like the fish are just hanging out all year round up in the colds of Alaska to get frozen to death themselves. No, they leave. You are going to have to forage for yourself, son. You are an idiot.
It's not going to be fun. I hope you know how to pickle them.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, not only...
Yeah, where are you getting the vinegar? You have not thought this through.
I just pee in it, right? Is what they did in Days of Old when I was pickling whale, I think.
You want some pee-pee fish?
Drink the pee-pee. Well, not only do Alexandra's brothers find it unbecoming of a woman to stay in an unmarried household with a man, but they also hold some resentment towards her that they are the rightful manly male heirs to both her farm and her fortune, regardless if they actually helped in the success of either. Alexandra, wanting nothing more than to be the successful woman farmer that she is and be left the fuck alone, dreams of a large man, a god made of the gold. The gold of sunlight. Oh. Picking her up.
That makes more sense.
Picking her up and flying her over the fields. Quote, she never saw him, but with eyes closed, she could feel that he was yellow like sunlight, and there was the smell of ripe cornfields about him. She could feel him approach, bend over her and lift her. And then she could feel herself being carried off swiftly across the fields.
I'm just amazed this woman can feel color.
She also grew mushrooms. But after this dream sequence, Willa Cather, and I don't know if this is intentional or not, but she says that Alexandra knows it's a dream because she's too fat to carry. Quote, she had a body which no man on the divide could carry very far. I don't know if that calls their men weak or her just abundant.
In her case, she'd have better odds in Alaska.
She could hibernate.
Fuck off. The only person we fat shame here is you. Okay? Aside from that, it's not okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I fat shamed the fictional character.
You can't fat shame that.
She'd do great in Alaska.
Terrible.
Talking about, she'd fight off bears, grow corn out in the snow, hibernate for the winter. She's fine.
You know from experience.
I do sleep an awful lot. No, Carl Lindstrom isn't.
You fucking do.
I do. I sleep a lot, man. I can sleep a long time.
I really missed out on a large vein. that I can start going down here.
Oh, my veins are large. They're shrinking, though.
And hibernation and fat jokes.
Wait until next winter. We'll get there.
I've got a lot of time. This is fantastic.
Now, Carl Lindstrom isn't the only one
Next fucking New Year party, dude, I'm fucking coming out swinging. Just fucking haymakers.
New year, new me. No, still basic.
You're going to eat so much more from the stress. You have no idea.
I'm going to make you cry.
Jordan, I'm going to kill you.
I'm going to kill you with fear and sadness. No, Carl Lindstrom isn't the only one who's being run out of town. Alexandra's younger brother, Emil, the one she sent to college, has been flirtatiously gallivanting with a married woman named Marie for several years. But as he gets older, he decides to leave his fantasies behind him and head for Mexico, where he can hopefully forget all about Marie. But after just a year away, Emil comes home, and his love for her is stronger than ever. He went to one of the places where, like, one of the 5 names for girls is Marie. I don't know if that was going to help. I'm obviously paraphrasing this whole side story with Emil and Marie because it's kind of your typical will they, won't they type of thing. There's even this very cute scene where the lights go out in church and Emil and Marie secretly kiss in the darkness. Ooh. But the important part of their story is that they're laying in Marie's orchard one day, when who should come by with his shotgun but Marie's husband, Frank.
Yeah.
An orchard's not a good place to hide, dude. Like, oh, there's a lot of trees. Yeah, and they're in a fucking row.
Yeah. They're in a row, and they're usually pruned so that you can fit a ladder under any fucking side of them.
I step 2 feet from the right, and I can see you from 200 yards. Like,
that's the whole thing.
Quote, the gun sprang to his shoulder. He sighted mechanically and fired 3 times without stopping. Stopped without knowing why. 3 months after the slaying of her brother, Alexandra is found in a snowstorm kneeling beside her brother's grave. She comes down with a fever in which she finds herself again swept up by the golden farm god of her dreams, but this time representing death. When she recovers from her illness, she goes to visit Marie's husband.
What color did he feel like that time?
Gray, probably. So she goes to visit Marie's husband, Frank, in the state penitentiary, where he's serving 10 years for double homicide. But Frank looks so miserable that Alexandra says she'll do what she can to get his release. The story ends with a correspondence between Carl Lindstrom and Alexandra, where they decide to marry. The end. Send food, cold, hungry.
I want to spend my life with this man.
He really knows how to not lift me.
This lady doesn't do endings.
No. It's very slice of life, is what she's known for. Yeah. Right. Oh, I'm sorry. Was there no plot? Did that bother you? Well, we're going to do it next episode, too.
No, it seems like there's an abundance of plot and an abundance of, like, you know, normal book shit, and then it's like sudden slice of life.
Yeah, because but that's how life happens. I mean, life doesn't have, like,
life just continuously is life, and it's life shit.
Well, I know, but there's no real end to it until you're fucking dead. Yeah. So without killing all the characters, yeah, they just continue on with their life. But she can only make it so long, I guess. I know, and I know that this is not the most exciting of book summaries, but people fucking loved it because of Willa Cather's prose. Nobody would ever think to write about something so fucking boring as not just farmers, but Swedish farmers. And yet word quickly got around, and everyone picked up O Pioneers because it was just so goddamn quaint and soothing to read. And maybe because this was the beginning of World War I, I don't know. And it's true, the story itself is boring, and honestly, her entire career is built on it. But, you know, she's one of those writers that you read because of how it's written, you know? Maybe people just need a fucking break from opening up the newspaper like, oh, hey, Jimmy's dead, you know? Well, quickly after her overnight success of O Pioneers, Willa Cather followed it up with the second novel of her Prairie Trilogy, released in 1915 as The Song of the Lark, a name inspired by the Jules Brenton painting of the same name, depicting a young farm girl staring off into the distance as the sun rises behind her. I'm only going to give a quick summary of this one because, honestly, I didn't read it. The story is of a young woman named Thea who, as one of the few people in her town able to play the piano, though not particularly well, becomes the town piano teacher. She travels to Chicago to learn how to be better, finding quick work playing the organ at a local church and singing in a choir. You've played my organ. However, when a man named Mr. Harsanyi is teaching Thea some tricks on the piano, he asks her to sing an accompaniment. When she does, Mr. Harsanyi tells Thea that her true talent lies in singing, not in her playing. Switching from piano to vocal lessons, Thea becomes a trained singer, eventually singing at the Met. You know, that actually kind of...
What the fuck is the Met?
It's the big opera house in New York.
Oh, okay.
But you know what? That kind of like has parallels to her own life. She went into school for fucking like medicine, but you know they were like, you know, probably better off if you're a writer instead. You can wear a derby hat anywhere you want, you know. And she went for it. So I mean, maybe it threw parallels to that.
You can't be a nurse with a derby hat.
No, God no. It's so uncouth and gentlemanly. And again, this became a huge hit for Willa Cather. And she didn't mean to make a trilogy about farmers, by the way. She was just writing what she knew. And it just so happens what she knew was farming, even though her dad was a farmer for like a year and a half. She still lived in the fucking town, was friends with farmers and whatnot. So we're 4 books in, and the last 2 were runaway successes for Willa. However, it was around this time that a cousin of Willa's, one of the ones she grew up with in Red Cloud, Willa Cather, that's a name that doesn't need to come back, died during a campaign in Cantigny, France in 1918, right at the tail end of World War I. According to the New York Times obituary, quote, "With splendid courage and coolness, he mounted the parapet of a trench and directed a destructive flanking fire from 2 automatic rifle teams exposed to 7 German machine guns." So yeah, he got fucking Swissed.
Fuck.
He was a lieutenant that fought under the command of Teddy Roosevelt, by the way. Kind of neat. To Willa, her cousin's death was, of course, crushing news. Although she remembered him fondly, she did also say that she thought her cousin Grosvenor was a bit odd, remarking, quote, "Whatever he put his hand to turned out either ugly or ridiculous." Oh, there's the inscription for your gravestone. Fuck off. But although he was 35, he was still 10 years younger than Willa, and she always saw him as her kid cousin. Although there were people half his age dying on the battlefield, it was with Grosvenor's death that she really understood the pointlessness of war. She also found out about his death in a very public setting, reading his obituary while she was getting her hair done in a salon. She later wrote, quote, "From that day on, he was in my mind. The too personalness, the embarrassment of kinship was gone. But he was in my mind so much that I couldn't get through him to other things. Some of me was buried with him in France, and some of him was left alive in me." His death would lead to one of her most famous works, but we'll get to that next episode. For now, I would have you remember that I had mentioned that there was a large immigrant community in Red Cloud, Nebraska, specifically from Europe. In particular, there were a lot of immigrants from the Czech Republic, or rather, as it was known back then, Bohemia. Well, one of these immigrants Willa befriended as a kid, a woman named Annie Pavelka. Annie Pavelka. There we are, first try. She was a strong, charismatic woman. Very much an inspiration for Alexandra and O pioneers, I would suspect. She was a real feminist icon before feminism was really even a thing or probably a word in America. Well, Willa decided to meet up with her old friend Annie back at Red Cloud for a bit in 1915 and 1916, eventually leading to the inspiration for her next novel, and by far one of her greatest works. Released in 1918, again from publishing house Houghton Mifflin, the final of the Prairie Trilogy was released, My Antonia. And we will get back to that next episode.
Thank God.
Do you feel like corn on the cob, or are you sick of it at this point? I think I know someone whose like extended family is from Nebraska, and they had to go to fucking Nebraska for like, I don't know, a wedding or something. And I was like, "Oh wow, you were gone for a week in Nebraska. What do you do?" Like, nothing. And I was like, "There weren't any museums." No, there was nothing.
No. You play cribbage, man.
I think they shot at some like derelict cars that were out in a field or something. I think that was about as far as they got.
Yeah. Cribbage. Shoot cats with weird growths on them. Like, I don't know. Like,
or you can try shooting the growths off the cats.
If you ever hear stories about like shit people did for fun when they're from the Midwest, like it's always insane.
Dude, I mean, even visiting like my grandparents in Wisconsin, the only thing that we did was like drank indoors. You know.
Yeah. What else do you fucking?
Well, there are plenty of things to do in Wisconsin if you look for it. You don't know that they're there, but they're there. Like, you know, something. But yeah, that's all that we did was we got drunk at 8 a.m. and we just sat around and read, and it was cozy and warm and it was fantastic. You get drunk by 8 a.m. You get a couple chapters in. You fell asleep in your chair by 9 a.m. You're up for fucking brunch. You know, it was great.
Maybe that's why everybody I know from the Midwest cares about death a lot less than I do.
Hey, you care about death too much. I mean, I would argue, hey, it's right around the corner. It's probably going to happen tonight. There's nothing that you can do.
What are you going to do? Just get mad about, like, the weather?
I mean, what else are you going to fucking do?
You can't fucking do anything about it. You're just going to fucking die. Like, whoa, dude, I'm just saying, like, maybe don't.
All I'm saying is, you know, you're not special. You know, everyone before you has died. Everyone after you will die. You're not special.
It's fucked up, and you're not even from there. Just your fucking grandparents are.
I still grew up Norwegian.
It's still in you.
Yeah, very Norwegian and Germanic, and wouldn't you know, those are two just very depressing countries. So that's fine.
Yeah, and then your ancestors settled in a very depressing place.
Yeah, they thought, hey, let's go for the golden son of Oregon. Yeah. I'm depressed.
Are we done?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Any final thoughts to Nebraska?
Is that we didn't just go over Nebraska? What was
Nebraska?
Man, I really phoned in on this one, huh?
That's cool.
Okay.